Hey everybody, how you doing? Hope everyone's having a good week. I just wanted to check in a little bit about the most excellent article that I brilliantly assigned, which is Jonathan Z. Smith and The Bare Facts of Ritual. This really is one of my favorite readings in the theory of religion, and I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so a little bit about Smith. He died a couple of years ago, much to the great sadness of us all. But I had had the pleasure of meeting him a few times, and he was quite the character. So he was a million years old when I met him 20 years ago. Super, super tall, like 6'6". And he was so old he walked hunched over and with a cane, and he had this crazy Einstein hair. And he was so cantankerous. He taught at the University of Chicago. That his wife used to have to plot out where he walked so he wouldn't get into arguments with his colleagues. Goals, I know. All right, so this magnificent little piece, I want to just break down some of the main parts and then talk about why I think this is one of the most robust theories of ritual. So, number one, right, he starts off with comparing the two sort of theories of ritual. So we have the Kafka story where the leopards break into the temple, and they become incorporated in the ritual because there's just nothing that people can do about it, right? And then on the other hand, we have the story of the um, the woman who's like, no, you cannot have a drink of water because it's going to get into the ritual. So his point here is that you really do need to take care of what goes into a ritual and what doesn't. Because if absolutely everything gets incorporated, then it's meaningless. Okay, issue number one. Issue number two. When he talks about the temple, and by the temple he means any sacred space, right? It could be a tree, right? When he talks about the temple as a focusing lens, what he means is that there's no room for accidents in that lens. So he mentions like the poor guy who dropped a basin of water and got stoned for his troubles, right? So what does this mean, like, for us? All right. When I was in high school and college, I was a banquet waitress, which means that I have been some small part of dozens and dozens of weddings. And in all that time, and in all the time that I've been to weddings, because at my age you've been to a lot, I've never seen the wedding cake dropped. What are the chances of that happening? It's amazing that I have never seen a wedding cake dropped. And even if you don't think of yourself as sort of a superstitious person, if in the middle of this wedding when they're doing the candle thing, right, if somebody lights the bride's hair on fire, don't you, isn't a little tiny part of you like, oh, this is doomed, man. This whole wedding this marriage is doomed. That's what he's talking about. It's a focusing lens. And so you can't have accidents. If something new happens, like the leopards, they have to be incorporated or they have to be condemned. All right, point number three. His wonderful observation about the distinction between what people say and what people know that they mean. This is particularly important when one is dealing with indigenous religions, right? Because you will get, right, so he says you're backed into a corner of thinking one of two things at this juncture. So the classic example that he doesn't talk about is there's this group of folks in Papua New Guinea, and they're totemic peoples, right? So kind of like Game of Thrones, right? That you know, there are people of the wolf and there are people of the dragon, right? And they've got wolfness in them, right? They've got dragonness in them. So this this particular crowd were parrots, and this guy said to some anthropologist, "I am a red parrot," and the anthropologist was like, "Do you really?" Right? So what Smith points out is that at this juncture we now have a moral decision on our hands. Do we say, well, I guess this guy thinks he's a parrot, right? And and in so doing, we decrease his humanity by saying he lives in, what Smith calls cuckoo land, like where he can't tell that there's a difference between a human and a parrot. Or do we say, he knows he's not a parrot. What does he mean when he says he's a parrot? And that's the moral obligation that Smith says adheres to the study of indigenous religions. We owe everyone the assumption of some base level of sanity. All right, so his wonderful examples, right? It's like, oh, I'm dancing with the bear and I'm singing poetry to the bear and I'm not gonna, hurt the bear in any unnecessary way. And then when I do kill the bear, oh my God, I'm not gonna feed the women and the dogs. It's like, of course you're going to feed the women and the dogs. Duh, right? You need women and dogs. Okay, or the pygmies, the pygmy example, right? It's like, oh, that was not me, Mr. Elephant. That was this very, very bad blade that some dude in Estonia made. It's his fault. So if you're a pygmy and you're just dead dropped an elephant, you know that you just dead dropped an elephant. So why the difference between what is said and what is known to be true? Okay, now we're rounding up on his last point and his most delicious point in my point of view, where he says that a ritual is the sight of something perfect, which is simultaneously an acknowledgement that that thing is not perfect in real life. So, for example, let us take Thanksgiving dinner. I assume that most of you have participated in American Thanksgiving. What does family dinner on a Tuesday look like? Well, unless you're one of the very few people who have like a full-time, mom who doesn't work outside of the home and who, runs the household with, great vim and vigor, Tuesday nights probably look like mayhem. Yeah? So mom's got, she's an attorney and she's got a Zoom meeting and, that's at 7:30 and your brother has soccer practice until 5 and so he grabs a breakfast bar and a thing of Gatorade and, you and your sister make Kraft macaroni and cheese and it's not the ideal family dinner. Let's talk about Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving, everybody shows up clean, a little dressed up. There's no cell phones at the table. You take out, the good flatware if you have it, and mom spends 2 days, mostly mom, some dads, some students, whatever, but whoever the cook is, spends a minimum of 2 days making this meal from scratch. And everyone sits around and you're on your best behavior. Yeah, your stupid little brother is annoying you, and you would on a Tuesday you'd kick him, but on Thanksgiving you don't. Mostly because it would hurt mom, but right, and everybody eats and talks nicely, and they're not looking, at the TV or their phones, and you try to stay away from, sticky subjects, politics, or whatever makes people uncomfortable in your family. And then afterwards, everybody thanks mom for this wonderful meal. How often does that happen, my friends? There are a couple of you who probably thank your mothers for everything she cooks, but my money says that 85 to 90% of you don't. So, Thanksgiving is the ritual of a perfect family meal, which by its mere existence points out that you can't have one of those every day. So, what we want to be perfect, we want the kill of the bear to be clean and compassionate and with his agreement, right? We want the kill of the elephant to, reunite Father Elephant with his dead family, right? It's a favor, really, right? That this acknowledges that what we want to be and what actually is are very different, right? That life is messy and ritual is clean. So we have rituals so that we have these moments of things being exactly the way that they're supposed to be. All right. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Ciao.